Hey guys, what is going on? It's me, Box12 here, and welcome back to another Realm of the Mad God Dungeon Guide video. This is kind of a special one today. The Ocean Trench is not just one of the oldest dungeons I have yet to cover, it was also originally the second hardest dungeon back when it came out. More than 7 years ago when our endgame content was the Tomb of the Ancients and the Wine Cellar. This is also one of our only 2 underwater dungeons at the time of this recording. And the Nidarian Reef isn't even a full dungeon, it's just a boss fight. So the Trench really is a unique specimen here. The once per realm event, the Hermit God, is our location of interest today. And because it can drop the helm of the Juggernaut, this is a very popular spot. Meaning you'll most likely not have to do much, you can go on autopilot and things will take care of themselves. It's a very iconic set piece with the sandy coast, body of water, the dark center that you can't go in, and the pillars. Surrounding it are 8 tentacles that, like everything else in this game, are only an issue if you sit on them. Accompanying these vertical appendages are up to 20 hermit minions. Tiny hermit crabs that used to scare me as a level 20 since they have these half-second paralyzed shots that get pretty chaotic when all grouped up, but you'll probably just use someone else to body block. When they're all gone, the Hermit God will emerge, sending out 8 minions to the perimeter, and re-summoning tentacles with whirlpools, all the while with a stream of blinding ink fired at the nearest player. But you'll probably stand still for this part too. When everyone is focusing at once, it only takes a couple seconds to melt it down, and the group healing is more than enough. A neat piece of trivia I like is that the Hermit God itself doesn't drop loot, but rather, upon death, copies the soulbound record to the 8 tentacle spawners, which then drop whatever loot you were eligible for. Which is why you'll sometimes get multiple bags as a drop with dexterity or vitality potions. Or even multiple white bags, it is possible. And of course, the Ocean Trench portal is a guaranteed drop. This is a uniquely terrifying dungeon for newcomers because there's an entirely new force of nature at work here. Being completely submerged underwater, you now have an air meter. The spawn has a bed of air pockets, and for 99% of public trenches, you'll be camping here until someone else rushes to boss, and then teleport to them, so you'll be fine. But if you leave to go clear, you only have 15 seconds before you can't hold your breath anymore and start getting chunked 100 damage a second. Your screen will turn more blue the longer it goes on, eventually flashing until you get to safety. If you don't get any oxygen in time, you will die via suffocation. If water was a more prominent element in Realm, it would be cool if there was a stat that increased your lung capacity. Even just making it a side perk for vitality I think would be a fun idea. That being said, the dungeon is generous enough with its air pockets. There's at least 1 in every room, sometimes 2 or 3, and they're all marked on the minimap as a blue dot. Unless you're experienced or confident, never leave a room without fully recharging, and if you start to run low on air while fighting an enemy, lure it away from the nearest air pocket, so you can ditch it for a quick breath before it catches back up. Suffocation is your biggest enemy, so when you keep it under control, it becomes a standard dungeon. There are no water physics of any sort. There are pieces of coral and seaweed on the floor, big colorful chunks of breakable coral in the hallways, and a really nice purple and blue tile set. But once you learn not to freak out when you run out of air and can properly defuse the situation, everything falls into place. The first major enemy is the Fishman Warrior, a beefy 10,000 HP, a triple spear throw, a confusing boomerang, and a star-shaped burst attack, all with medium level damage. He's got his bases covered. On his own, it's all a matter of circling. It's the tiny fishmen that throw me off. They often come grouped up, which means more confusion, and when you're trying to grab some air without getting confused, it gets annoying. The 1x1 method never hurts. Creep up to a new room, see who's in there, draw aggro to the closest aggressors, and isolate the threat. Always kill the small fry first. They're often the fastest, but also the weakest, so they'll go down quickly. Then you can focus on the big guys who are almost always slower. The giant squid is probably the simplest enemy to understand. It looks intimidating because it goes right for you without hesitation, but this lets you pull it in a straight line while it leaves a trail of rings behind it. You can even backtrack into rooms you've already cleared if you need the space. It does have a spread shot, but it's unlikely to ever catch up with you while you're backing out. It might throw out a blinding ink ball or two. It might not, I wouldn't lose sleep over it. You can gun these down in a matter of seconds before they can even change attacks, unless you're soloing on an unmaxed character, which I wouldn't recommend. The gray sea slurps are peculiar fellows. They'll keep being spawned in by the sea slurp home and collectively shoot at you when you get within a certain range. A bunch of 40s can hurt for low defense, but 25 and higher reduces it to a mere tickle. What's funny is that they'll start to run after you, but if you get far enough away, they'll stop dead in their tracks, as if they completely forgot what was happening. Also, if you get too close to their home, they'll activate a defense mechanism to ward you off. Then once you back away or destroy their home, they'll resume their regular attack. I like when enemies behave this way because it shows that they have some degree of intelligence. Not only are they attacking you because it's a video game and that's what enemies do, but because they feel threatened and are defending their home out of instinct. Native inhabitants of a given area or biome should have idle behavior unrelated to the main characters. This is their territory after all, they live here.
Stay out of my territory.
But taking these out is not a hard task. Piercing classes can go right for the home, you can spell bomb it, melees can barge right up to it, you can flat out ignore it if you want. You have a lot of options here. This is the least threatening enemy in the whole dungeon. On the flip side, we have the scariest enemy. The sea mare, or ponies as they have been dubbed for years. Long before the commander of the Crusade or the Ice Sphere, we had ponies. You haven't lived until you try rushing an ocean trench and get paralyzed by 2 or 3 of these and have to play your get out of jail free card. It's just a rite of passage. And while the realm is certainly home to many more terrifying creatures nowadays, these were the classic jump scare enemies and will still give newcomers a good jolt. A good heads up if you're about to run into one of these is if you catch a glimpse of the tiny seahorse enemies up ahead. It doesn't guarantee that there will be one, but sea mares never travel without their shield of Syngnathidae. The pony is only a close-range threat. The seahorses have a bubble attack, but it's ineffective while moving back, and the infamous paralyzed stars have a predictable pattern that doesn't move too fast. It's only if you rush into the next room and get suddenly caught by one that they can chain paralyze you and force a nexus. What you have to keep in mind is that they don't actually try to sit on you. If you're really far away when they've already seen you, they'll rush over at a high speed as if they're not going to stop, but they do. You want to take short, periodic steps backward or to the side. Anything more and you risk running out of room or causing a rubber band effect on the pony. Like with suffocation, you just gotta keep your cool and not get stressed out when you're in the situation. A navigation tip I have from experience is if it looks like you're going the right way, it's probably a dead end. The ocean trench likes making you take the long way. There are always 11 rooms in between the spawn and the boss room. It's not like there are that many dead ends either, but I consistently pick the wrong way to go without fail. I think I see a treasure room in this dungeon's future. That would spice things up. Alas, when you make it to the boss room, your fight begins with Thessal, the mermaid goddess. But before you can even get a glimpse, you'll probably get hit by one of her coral bombs. Now, doing these in a realm means that the fight will play out almost exactly like the hermit god. Everyone huddled up on one air pocket, mowing her down over the next 20 seconds, tanking and out-healing most damage. In a small group, however, this is quite a different encounter, a rather dangerous one if you make the wrong moves. Here's how the room is set up. There are 4 air pockets in the cardinal directions. On each of these air pockets, there is a deep sea beast with 15,000 base HP and a frequent 2-second slowing attack. So if you want any air, you have to practically sit on top of this thing to get any. But without average defense, vitality, and a decent healing pet, it kinda hurts. You can't sit there and take it for long, and you shouldn't have to at all. But the only way to avoid them is to perform these military-grade jukes and just barely skate by to fill up some air. But you can't stick around the same pocket for more than 2 seconds because Thessal's coral bombs are homing in on you constantly, inflicting pet stasis, further weakening your regenerative abilities. And because the Kraken has so much HP, even a fully buffed warrior couldn't kill it fast enough, and even if it did, she respawns them after they die. Sometimes 30 seconds later, sometimes 5. I think it gets triggered during a phase change, but it's not entirely clear. So what they want you to do is run up like a trained assassin, dodging everything, fill up a little bit of air, then run to the next bubble, and do it again until you're full. But while you're going to that next bubble, you're losing air again, and if you get hit, you'll be slowed, taking even longer to reach the air supply. So really, your best bet is to take the hits, get a full breath of oxygen, it only takes about 4 seconds to completely refill from 0, then go fight Thessal. Alternatively, you can adopt the Pentaract strat, where you go around weakening all 4 Krakens, then pick one off to refill in peace, get some damage on her, and if the beast respawns, move to another pocket, kill that Kraken near instantly, and repeat the process. Always have an escape plan too. Remember where the exit is at all times. If you can't take the heat, back out into the safe room before the boss that you should have already cleared. You could also bring a knight to stun the Krakens, and that would negate a huge part of the problem I described. When you're actually fighting Thessal though, it's a pretty fun time. It starts off simple with her 4 pairs of double shots that do 100 damage by the way, so she does hurt. Then she'll put out her trademark armor-breaking crescents. A word of warning, stay far away from the coral bombs if you get armor broken. The first one comes alone, but after it explodes, 6 more join the party, each with 5 40 damage bullets. That's 1,400 total raw damage. Now, you're not going to get hit by every single shot, but at the frequency that they show up, that can stack fast. As the fight goes on, she'll keep getting a little faster and gain attacks. She also likes going invulnerable throughout the fight, so that would be a good time to grab some air. But no matter the phase, except for this one, it's best to maintain a medium distance. Not too far back into the sea beasts, but not too close to the armor break. As you know quite well by now, you'll have to circle around her while attacking to avoid the coral bombs. But even in the fastest part of her phase, there is a perfect rhythm where a gap will open between every one of her shots. It's all a matter of locating and going over to it on the spot. You can do the side-to-side method if you're not confident in circling, but you'll have to back out when those coral bombs catch up. Unfortunately, there is one last phase that kind of puts a damper in the whole thing. When she reaches half health, she'll send out 3 waves of weakening, completely unavoidable except from really far away or taking cover behind walls. Assassins and wizards will still be able to get some DPS here, but this whole phase is really nothing more than a stall for time. She'll briefly stop throwing bombs, so you could chill out in the area behind the walls in between air pockets, but it's up to you. Once she's done, get back in there and do as much damage as you can. I think the weakens come out every 10 to 15 seconds, but she always does a final one on command as a last resort when she gets low enough. On very rare occasion, after being defeated, Thessal will crumple over your loot with a new sprite and ask, "Is King Alexander alive?" You then have to respond with, "He lives and reigns and conquers the world." She'll say, "Thank you, kind sailor," and 3 coral gifts will spawn around her, each with their own loot table, meaning yes, there are 4 separate chances of a white bag, but if you don't say the right message in time or at all, she will retaliate. This is known as dying Thessal. She gains 960,000 HP and fires all of her attacks simultaneously, but only for a few seconds. She will despawn shortly after, since she is dying after all, but you won't get the coral gifts if this happens. The best way to prevent this is to have the message already typed out beforehand, and then enter it if she asks. That way no one can sabotage it by saying the wrong thing on purpose. This whole gimmick is actually based on a real Greek legend called the Legend of Thessaloniki, a Macedonian princess and sister to King Alexander. When he died, she was so grief-stricken that she tried jumping into the sea to end her own life, but turned into a mermaid instead, passing judgment on incoming sailors with the question, "Is King Alexander alive?" If they answered correctly, she would let them pass. If not, she would transform into a gorgon and destroy the ship. Just knowing that makes me appreciate Thessal a whole lot more. There was inspiration and thought behind her design, other than she's a mermaid. Next to the Oryx statue, this is probably my favorite Easter egg in the entire game. Because it's such a rare occurrence, it feels so special when you get it. And the fact that she doesn't just turn invulnerable, but instead gains so much HP that you couldn't possibly kill her in time, is such a strange decision, but I kind of love it for that. The loot table is quite a stylish one. I've always appreciated the luminous pink coral set. It's also a very classic set of items, back when coral bow was the other best bow in the game. Sea-bow, D-bow, elvish, quat, that was your setup. And it's still a decent bow with a higher rate of fire, more narrow double shot, and reliable damage. We just have a lot more options nowadays. Coral Trap is the only one that can paralyze at the same damage as T6, just in a smaller radius, making it a great choice in most areas. It used to only be a high-tier Cyan drop, but was eventually upgraded to white bag status like Sea-bow. Coral Silk Armor, or Sea Silk, is a small case of the Robe of the Mad Scientist, although still better than that apparel of confusion. Its stats are 1 down from Hydra, but with 3 speed. It's a small perk, but it's nice. Coral Ring is honestly not as bad as its reputation, but I do think that the whole coral set is in need of a statistical reevaluation. The Tide Turner Trident is an orange bag drop, and the Fishman Warrior can even drop the armor for that set, the other 2 pieces being in the Nidarian Reef. Coral Juice is the consumable for this dungeon, plus 100 HP and MP. No drawbacks, it's just a good healing item, but only the coral gift can drop it, so it's pretty rare. And of course, the main drop is a potion of mana, the original and still one of 4 main sources for it outside of endgame content. The Ocean Trench is a very historic dungeon for Realm of the Mad God, and is still a one of a kind. While the drowning mechanic may take some getting used to, understanding the boss and managing the sea beasts is the only thing truly difficult here. But even that is only in a solo scenario. In a public realm, you should definitely start running these. Actually, scratch what I said before, the hardest part is getting loot from a public trench. You can't let up for a second without settling for that dreaded mark. Overall, it's a fine dungeon. Boss could use some work, but the atmosphere and difficulty is pretty spot on, and I do anticipate an eventual rework in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright. See ya.